I'm Marta Bloom. March 8th is International Women's Day, when the world comes together to celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. This year's celebrations finds us at a crossroads where the inequalities faced by women literally every day are being increasingly exposed, and the promise of real change is in the air. In celebration of International Women's Day, Camel Assembly, an international community of creative female leaders who gather to make change, are launching what the group calls the Active Activist Campaign. This campaign highlights the impact of women who show up daily to bring positive change through their many causes to their communities. Active activists come from many cultures and backgrounds, but all share these traits in common: action, commitment, consistency, generosity, creativity, and accountability. Today, I am pleased to introduce to you 4 powerful women who exemplify active activism, each in their own unique way. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Let's start with my friend, Annette Schatz. Annette is the CEO of Relevant. She also works with DoSomething.org and their Teens for Jeans campaign, providing 1 million pairs of jeans which help to clothe half of America's homeless youth. Welcome, Annette. Next, we have Shira Brown. Shira Brown is the Director of Partnerships for Billboard and The Hollywood Reporter. She's also a volunteer for Musicians on Call, bringing the healing power of music to patients in hospital. Welcome, Shira. And next we have Medina Nurai. Medina is the founder of Burkas and Beer, working to combat Islamophobia. Welcome.
Thank you.
And one beautiful person left to announce, Victoria Reese. Victoria is the founder of #WeAreIllmatic, bringing awareness to multiple sclerosis, redefining what sick looks like. So great to have you here, ladies.
Thank you.
Marta.
What is your activism and what is your cause? Let's start with Victoria.
So I am an activist for a campaign that I started called We Are Illmatic. We Are Illmatic is an MS awareness campaign, which is multiple sclerosis. I so happened to be diagnosed in September 2012 with multiple sclerosis. I was just 25, and upon getting this diagnosis, I realized that when I Google multiple sclerosis, it looks like this is a disease that only affects older white women. And I was 25, I'm an African-American millennial woman, I'm mobile, and I decided to do something about it. I was very active on social media, and I was transparent about my diagnosis on social media. People started to contact me and say, wow, like I've never seen another black woman that had MS. Some of them hadn't told their families that they had MS, they hadn't shared it. It was just this, void. So I decided to do something about it. I became very active in the National MS Society, and then, even then, I still saw a void where there weren't really campaigns targeted to people that look like me. So I went and created my own campaign. It's called We Are Illmatic. It's inspired by Nas, the legendary rapper Nas. Yeah. His debut album in 1994 was called Illmatic. So I decided to just change the name and flip it to a more empowering word. So I'm uniting women of color that have been diagnosed, but I'm also redefining what sick looks like, and it looks just like me.
Well, you're educating a lot of people that didn't know what you found out.
Correct.
Okay. Medina?
So my activism is Burkas and Beer, burkasandbeer.com. It's a blog that I launched in 2010, I want to say. And it was mainly just my frustrations as a first-generation Afghan-American Muslim woman. I just felt like my community was really being targeted. I felt a lot of frustration, and it kind of started off with me just sharing my opinions about what was going on, but I quickly found that I was able to kind of coalition build with other communities. So I've worked with Black Lives Matter, I've worked with a lot of Latino communities, and mainly, especially now, considering the administration and what's going on with DACA and just all of these marginalized communities facing really similar obstacles, I've been able to use Burkas and Beer to not only network, but actually show up every day, either whether it's protests or calling for policy change. My blog has really given me the platform to do that.
Great, can't wait to hear more about it. Shira?
My activism is to bring the healing power of music to patients all over the country, but for me specifically here in LA. So I volunteer with Musicians on Call. They are a nonprofit organization that was founded in New York, but has since grown to several cities around the country. And what we do is we take musicians and we bring them room to room in hospitals, playing music for patients and bringing the healing power of music to those patients.
That's beautiful. Annette?
Thank you, Marta. Wow, these are some wonderful ladies on the stage here today with us. So I do a lot of work with DoSomething.org. And this organization is a digital platform, and it brings the digital activation offline on a local level. And it really is do something good in the world. Every day, do something good. And it's targeted to local communities and our youth in particular, to get our youth active in our cultures, in our society, in our schools, and in our communities. So DoSomething.org is really, I started working with them when they were under 1 million followers, and today they've grown to 5.5 million followers and people in every area code in the United States and in 131 countries around the world. Wow. So change really starts on a local level, and then it grows to maybe a regional level, a state level, a national, and a global. And Victoria, I think you mentioned earlier really the power of the digital world and revolution and sharing it and sharing your story and sharing your work that you do. And this has been really, really an important pillar for DoSomething.org.
What a great cause. Victoria, your challenge was personal and life-threatening. How were you able to rise above it to help others?
I mean, being diagnosed, it's funny how seed ideas work, because I didn't set out to do any of this. I literally just got a diagnosis when I was 25, 6 months into being in LA.
Was it frightening?
I was very scared. No one in my family has multiple sclerosis. I didn't even know what it was in the moment. But my doctors, they tried to tell me as much as they could in the moment, but they gave me a piece of paper that said what MS was, stapled together, and told me to go home and read it. So that was the best they could do in the moment, and that was how I found out, and I had to go home to read this pamphlet. And it was very hard. I couldn't read that pamphlet for months because you know every medical definition, it just sounds, it's the worst. So it would make my stomach turn. So right. I didn't set out to do this, but in doing it, I felt very liberated. So when I got diagnosed, I took some time to kind of cope and accept it. And then I was active on Instagram, and I told Instagram that I had MS because I was not about to suffer alone. I was like, I don't want to suffer in silence. So.
And you're not alone.
I'm not. And I didn't realize how alone I felt in the moment until I started to meet people through social media. So I had this community on social media of MS sisters and brothers that I was talking to just through my DMs. And then I ended up, after a few years, meeting a few of them and meeting people that have MS. But really, my family and my MS community and my MS family was on social media. So this turned into something that I had no idea that it was going to turn into. But now it's helping so many people across the country.
So as you're giving back, do you feel that you've gotten something back?
I get something back every day. Whether it's just the honor and privilege to be in a place like this, being interviewed or being asked questions. I've been on podcasts and in magazines and things like that. Just the fact that someone takes the time out for little old me to hear my story and help me tell other story is an honor and a privilege. But
well, you're the voice of many.
Yes, and people reach out to me just to thank me for raising my hand to say, hey, we have a story too. We exist, we're here. So that's an honor and a privilege every single day.
Beautiful. Shira, you translated your profession into activism. From creating content around some of the biggest names in music for Billboard magazine to bringing the healing power of music to patients in hospitals. Describe the moment you knew you needed to take action.
I don't know if it was so much a moment as, well, actually that's not true. I would say the moment, you know, I had moved to LA, you know, and I was working for Billboard and the Hollywood Reporter, and we're working with celebrities every day, creating world-class content every day, and I felt disconnected from the purpose of what I was doing. And I know the power of music. I know what music can do for people and what it's done for me in my life up until that moment. And so I really wanted to reconnect, and I had known about Musicians on Call from living in New York and working in radio. We did a lot of work with them in the past. And I thought, let me see if they have a chapter out here. Let me see if they're here in LA, and they were. So I reached out, and about 2 months later, after I went through a bunch of paperwork and training from the hospitals, I started volunteering. And
because they train you in order to allow you to bring the music in?
Exactly, because you have to be aware of the hospital procedures and where you can go, what rooms you can go into. You know, when you're in hospitals, you know, you deal with all kinds of patients with all kinds of conditions, so it's really about exactly, like, what do you do in a case of emergency? What do you do if, God forbid, something happens? You know, what rooms are you able to go into without a problem? You know, and so that was it. So, you know, I went through all this training, and I became familiar with the hospitals, and I got certified to volunteer, and then I started volunteering, and you know, it really did. It brought me back to remind me, what's the purpose? Why people make music for this type of impact, and the type of impact that music can have on people, and how it really does heal them. And I've witnessed it firsthand with my own 2 eyes.
Beautiful. And how has music healed you or helped you?
Well, I mean, I think just in general, for me, music is one of those things where when I'm having a rough day, or when I need to get in a specific mood, or motivate myself to just clean my house, you know, like, I feel like there's a different kind of music for whatever it is that I'm going through, and that's what it's done for me. And it just gets me through the best times, it gets me through the worst times, and now I'm working on seeing how we can kind of incorporate the two together, how we can take Billboard and how we can do a little bit more together with Musicians on Call, especially with them being so closely related.
And we're going to have you back another time to talk more about it.
Yes.
If you make it happen.
Of course.
Medina, your blog combines political satire with soul-bearing personal insight. How has the digital world influenced your activism?
It's really, really influenced my activism in the sense of feeling like there is a community out there that feels the same. So being the daughter of refugees, being Afghan American, being Muslim, but then also being really outspoken as a female, I felt alone a lot of times. The stereotype is that Afghan women are oppressed and they're not encouraged to pursue education, or they're not encouraged to just even state their opinion. And my family was nothing like that. So I constantly felt like, how am I this unicorn in what is supposed to be this very, very marginalized culture and community? And through the digital world, I was really quickly able to find out that that's not the way it is. And there are a lot of other young women who are of Middle Eastern background who are doing the same and who are sharing their opinions. And I kind of found out that I was also almost falling victim to the stereotype. And it just really made me realize that the power of connecting with the platform that's digital, because it can reach Afghanistan, it can reach Los Angeles. It allows you to build these coalitions and to really feel united. So even though it's just being behind a keyboard, it gives you the avenue to meet face to face. So like, for instance, even being here today, the founder of Camel Assembly is another young Afghan American woman. And before Burqas and Beer, before like the online world, I would have had no clue that there was another young Afghan American woman who was seeking to like spark change. But because of my activism and because I was able to reach her online, I get to sit here with like these amazing women. So it's definitely influenced what I do and what I believe in.
Very good. Do you think digital activism has the same power as feet on the street?
I feel like in some instances, yes. The world is shifting and so many things are happening online, and grassroots change is now happening online, like with hashtags, with GoFundMes, with people just signing petitions. So being able to give someone who maybe lives in a rural community and the only thing that they have is internet access, and they can't show up to International Women's Day March, or they don't have transportation to go show up to a congressperson's office. They can do that through online activism. I think the most powerful way is to combine both of those, right? So to coalition build, to network, to maintain these contacts through the digital world, and then whoever's able to show up, show up. But this is giving voices to people who might not be able-bodied, who maybe can't leave their homes, who maybe don't have transportation. So I feel like it's really, really empowering. But the best way to utilize it would be to combine both of
Burkas and Beer, tell us about the name.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so basically, the name Burkas and Beer. So I was trying to find a way to one, have like a super catchy name, right? But then also—
And it's super catchy.
Thank you.
Right, ladies?
Thank you. Thank you. But I wanted to think, like, I've always described myself as Afghan American, but writing the hyphen in between, right? So not fully Afghan, not fully American, but one doesn't exist without the other. And when I would tell people I was from Afghanistan, it would always be like, oh, but like you're wearing a skirt, or like, but you don't have like the, and I'm like, my mom like never even wore that. Like there's so much misconception. And when I would speak to like my family in Afghanistan, they would be like, do you drink alcohol? Like, is everyone like, is that what you guys do over there? So it was just these—
Did you say you drink beer?
I actually don't drink beer, but yeah, I let them know I dabble here and there. So I was like, oh my God, there's like these images that are really stereotypical, but like, I was like, okay, there's the burqa and there's the beer. And even though I don't really drink beer and I've never worn a burqa, I was like, I feel like it's a funny, like satirical kind of way to describe my identity. So that's where Burkas and Beer came from. And it has like a really funny response. Like if it's Afghans, they're like, oh my God, like why would you put beer in your name? But yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
And I love it. I love the name.
Thank you.
Annette, prior to founding Relevant, you helped to create a global fashion brand with hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. Today, many causes start with a grassroots movement. How important is that grassroots start?
You know, I find it to be really, really important, particularly if you want to talk about sustainability and year over year and growth. So if you look at it from a sustainability point of view, it has to reach every market and every individual. So for example, with DoSomething.org, we did the Teens for Jeans campaign. And what that essentially is, you alluded to it earlier, Marta, but really what it is it's a campaign where it's actionable because you go in your closet, everybody has a few extra things in their closet they might need purged and cleaned out. But jeans are particularly important because they're kind of a universal dress code for young kids who are particularly in high school, but could be spanning all ages and walks of life. And homelessness has reached almost an epidemic proportion in our own country, and even on local levels. So it was to really inspire youth, and not only youth, but people of all ages, to become involved and not just walk by. So there's it's really four easy things: think it, do it, build it, prove it. And that's it. And so really on those efforts, and you know, really the social media community where it has a different platform and a different voice that reaches many, many people, that prior to 2013, really the technology has changed the world and how we communicate. And so those really are some of the critical things that we do, and it makes it actionable for people of all ages. So then, you know, you get your friends together, you have a campaign, a small one, you donate it, you reach out to your local shelter, and do something good. Do something good every day. You'll feel better about yourself. You'll feel happier.
You definitely will.
Absolutely. You've clothed half of America's homeless youth, actually. What does it take for a grassroots movement, do you feel, to go global?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and really it is just, you know, it's word of mouth, it's the technology component, it moves from a local event to a regional event. People can sponsor it. There's a campaign committee where, like, new volunteers that sign up for the organization. There's multiple campaigns, and maybe something different speaks to each unique person. And you don't have to, you can participate in multiple campaigns, which I like that platform as well. And I think that really has catapulted the growth of the organization, particularly in the last 5 years, because whether it's bullying, whether it's environmental issues, health-related issues, whatever that moment is, gun-related issues, there are different campaigns, and you can participate in each campaign, and they help give you a protocol and a platform that's understandable to execute. Sometimes these things can feel overwhelming.
Right, yeah.
As you said earlier, you know, sometimes going to a march is not feasible, but participating maybe in your high school or your local community, then that's how it spreads and grows to 5.5 million people today.
Thank you, Annette. We should all learn from you, and you ladies as well. Thank you for all being here. And while I am proud to celebrate International Women's Day, in truth, I believe the power of women and the opportunities afforded to them must be celebrated every day in the efforts each of us make to better not only the world, but our place in it. Each of us can be an activist in our own way. Each of us is empowered to make change, and together we can multiply that power. Thanks to Camel Assembly for helping us to shine light on these amazing women. You can share your stories at #ActiveActivist. I'm Marta Bloom. Thanks for watching.